Calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Urías fires. Swinging a drive. Deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and I'm your host tonight. I'm joined by Blake Williams. And just to give you guys kind of a quick rundown, we're going to go over the Mets series. It's the only games the Dodgers have sort of played since the All-Star break, obviously. We're going to get into some injury updates on Clayton Kershaw, Jason Heyward, Bobby Miller, and more, and kind of go over, just little small news since the All-Star break. But first, I'll start with Blake. How are things going on this fine Sunday evening?
It's been going pretty good. It's disappointing they didn't get the sweep, but taking 2 out of 3 is nice, especially because my dad's a Met fan, so get to do a little trolling with the series there.
There you go. A little bragging rights, a little bucket hat, a little bit of everything for Blake. Good. Well, again, we want to thank everyone who's watching this live on YouTube and remind you to please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to make sure you don't miss when we do our live shows on Sunday nights, along with our kind of daily updates during the week on news and rumors and stuff like that. Obviously, with the trade deadline coming up, we're going to have a lot of content for you guys. We have a draft review coming up. We had Justin Lorber, who all of you know as future Dodgers, of course. And if you're listening to this on the podcast side, we appreciate that as well. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us there. So with that being said, let's get into some baseball. Obviously, the Dodgers went into the All-Star break with a little bit of momentum on a 4-game winning streak, swept the Freeway Series against the Angels, swept that all the season series against the Angels, really, if you want to expand it further. I think there's maybe a little bit of concern over, what the break would sort of do for them. Different players think different things. Sometimes players want to get away. Others, probably if you're Mookie Betts, you probably wanted to keep going because of the torrid pace he was hitting at. But, the time off didn't really seem to slow the Dodgers down at all. They come out and I guess you could argue they were a little slow to get going against Justin Verlander. He had a no-hitter into the 5th inning until Mookie broke it up with his single. Dodgers ended up going on to win that one. The offense was, usual stars contributing, but what I want to focus on from the series opener against the Mets was Julio Urías. He allowed just 1 hit. He got finished with 7 strikeouts and got through 6 innings. Another, kind of strong performance. The Dodgers sort of needed that. So, Blake, what I'll come to you is, just kind of overall, what do you think of his start against the Mets kind of specifically?
It was really encouraging since he's been struggling most of the year. He kind of needed to get back on track, and the Dodgers need him to get back on track and kind of be the ace, especially with Kershaw out for a certain amount of time that we're not really sure of, even though they've given some updates on him. But if they want to go deep into the playoffs, they're going to need Julio to pitch well, and it was good to see him get back on track here.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. His first start off the IL against the Royals wasn't great. There was some bad luck, but his pitch count, he wasn't fully built up yet. Only 3 innings. A little bit better with his start against the Pirates, and then I think the Mets start was another step forward. And like you said, it's something that the Dodgers, really need, especially just in general with him because of expectations going into the season, and in particular with the current state of the rotation. And you alluded to Clayton Kershaw's injury. We're going to get into that a little bit later on tonight, so make sure you guys stick around for it. But back to Julio. Overall, how are you feeling with him and kind of, his progression or confidence level moving forward?
I kind of felt he would bounce back a bit just because some of his numbers suggested he would. Like, he was allowing home runs at an unsustainable rate. So I think just bringing that back down is going to help him out. I think it was encouraging he had 7 strikeouts in 6 innings because he's not really a strikeout guy, but getting more than 9 per 9 innings is a good number to have for him. So I think that was encouraging. And we've seen him be an ace before. Seems like the start of his season may have just been like a blip in the radar. Maybe he was putting too much pressure with his contract coming up or something. But I think the time off kind of helped him reset, and I think he's going to kind of get back on track. He might not be the ace we've seen before, but he should be at least a solid pitcher in the rotation.
Yeah, and like Laura said, Julio looked really good. It was definitely good to see. I think, Blake and I will certainly echo that, and we appreciate you viewing Laura. And again, just a reminder, if our super chat is open, so fans, if you want us to address a specific topic right now before we sort of get to it, go ahead and do that, and I'll definitely stop the show and answer that question to the best of our ability. So now let's move on to the next game. Another win for the Dodgers. Not a shutout, but still 5-1. Mookie Betts hit a home run again, sort of the straw that stirs the offense, if you will. The Dodgers had a 2-1 lead through 8 innings, and then the Mets just sort of Mets themselves. I know that there has since been some discussion over the wind and how it impacted Max Muncy's pop fly to third base. Anyway, any way you want to cut it, ended up being a 3-run inning for the Dodgers. In the 9th, they win 5-1. Again, though, I think, let's talk pitching. Tony Gonsolin, 5 innings, just the 1 run allowed, but he only threw 54 pitches before coming out. And, Dave Roberts alluded to some of that because of the humidity out there. Also, it is fair to say that Gonsolin did allow his a good amount of hard contact to the Mets. It was just right at defenders more times than not. So, Blake, kind of with that, what's your level of, I asked you about Julio Urías, what's your level of confidence in Tony Gonsolin and kind of what he can be moving forward, or, are you concerned?
I think he's kind of a mid to back end starter moving forward. His all-star season we saw last year is probably not something he's going to do quite often, but he can be a solid pitcher. It seems like he always just kind of goes 5 innings or so, giving up a run or two. And it's just kind of what he is. Like, I don't think we should expect too much more from him, or I don't think he's going to have many blow-up games where he allows 7 runs in a game. So I think with their state of their pitching staff right now, it's solid to have that right now. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I do think he would thrive in a bullpen role. I know Jeff likes to laugh at me for saying that, but it's what he's best suited for. Get him one time through the order and just let him do what he does. I think he would thrive there. And that's not to say he's not a good starter. It's just, it seems like that would be in a great role for him in the postseason.
You have to get your Gonsolin to the bullpen propaganda out. Now, I won't stop you. So since I'm filling in for Jeff, you free reign with that tonight. Okay, so now let's get to the series finale on Sunday. If you're watching this live with us, that would be today. If it's podcasting after the fact, then certainly we'll just leave it at Sunday. Similar sort of situation. Max Scherzer, I think we all sort of, as much as he's kind of struggled this season, the Mets have obviously struggled. I think, at least for me, I sort of expected his best effort, if you will, especially considering the last time he faced the Dodgers was at Dodger Stadium and the whole sticky stuff issue and ejection and his tirade with all of that. Scherzer comes out, 7 scoreless innings. Dodgers don't really get much going. He walked Mookie and Freeman. I believe it was in the 4th inning. So the Dodgers had 2 on with nobody out, but then the next 3 batters couldn't do anything with it. Bobby Miller, I thought, sort of, held his own. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he pitched well enough to keep them in the game, and that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, and I think, with Miller, again, it was kind of the 5th inning seems to be sort of a trouble spot for him. Is that just do you think it's just a matter of, kind of going through the lineup again multiple times, fatigue? What do you think could be to blame for that?
Maybe a bit of both. It's hard to say what the exact reason is. Like, I don't think he's ever going to want to disclose that, give the other teams any other information, but yeah, he hasn't pitched a ton like in the minor leagues, so he's still really new to all this, I guess, and kind of building up and working his way back. I know he pitched in college and everything, but it's just different. Like when you're pitching in the major leagues, it's so much more tiring, mentally taxing, physically taxing, and he's young. Like it's just something rookies go through. I'm sure he'll get through it. He just needs to keep working through it.
Yeah, okay. And I see we have here a super chat from Michael, and as I said, thank you. If you guys want to throw those up, we'll stop our show and get to it. This one is it's a little I don't know if controversial is the right word, but I don't think you're alluding to Will Smith being run into the ground with Austin Barnes playing, right? Like I don't know if I necessarily agree with this, because I think the argument for some is that Barnes is playing too much because the Dodgers are trying to preserve Will Smith. Is there anything you want to add there, Blake?
I think he's trying to say they're going to have to run Will Smith into the ground just to stop playing Austin Barnes.
Got it.
But, I mean, it's a backup catcher. I feel like that's one of the least worries of the Dodgers right now. Like, no team has a good backup catcher. It's just catching isn't a strong position to begin with. The Dodgers are lucky to have one of the best ones, and we should be thankful for that. But Austin Barnes is basically just a coach on the team, and we just kind of have to accept him at that role.
Yeah, I think, you make up a great point with the Dodgers have, multiple issues on their roster that sort of need to be addressed, whether they've been created because of injuries. Well, here, Michael's clarifying. He's saying that Smith is going to be fatigued. Again, if that is the case, I sort of disagree with that, because I feel like the argument, everybody's upset with Barnes because he's, quote unquote, starting too much. But anyway, back to kind of the backup catcher really quick before we circle back to the series against the Mets. Dodgers have multiple issues that need to be addressed at trade deadline. Injuries, player performance, whatever the case is, it is it is what it is. And I think you said it well, where it's, the backup catcher situation. In a perfect world, would Barnes be hitting better? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, how many games has he individually really cost them in the grand scheme of things? Not many.
And then going into the postseason, he's never going to play. If he gets one at bat, I think it's not going to be ideal for the Dodgers, and they're probably not going to let him take any at bats. It's just he's there for an emergency situation. And at that point, if you're losing Will Smith, I think you have bigger problems than who your backup catcher is.
Yeah, definitely. So back to the Mets series. Is there any concern with you? Scherzer, as much as he sort of struggled, he is kind of the pedigree starting pitcher that, you'll probably see in the postseason. Are you concerned at all by seeing, the Dodgers lineup basically be shut down by him today?
Not really. I mean, baseball's hard to begin with, and even though Scherzer has struggled, he's still Max Scherzer, and he has that elite stuff. So it just kind of happens. They won 2 out of 3 games. It's hard to be upset about that. Would have been nice to see them score some more and sweep him, but we've even seen him when he was at his prime. They scored 5 runs off him when he was with the Nationals in the postseason. So it's just baseball, I think, and just nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah. So that, again, short and quick series with the Mets. Dodgers took 2 out of 3, although not necessarily that quick, I guess, if you factor in the rain delay on Sunday, the initial one, and then they had to push it back an extra 20 minutes from the rescheduled start time. I see a lot of comments about Max Muncy saying he needs to be addressed. We'll have a question segment at the end that if you guys want to ask, bring those up again, we'll answer them. But yeah, so let's move on to a little bit of, I think, unexpected news in some regard. Ryan Pepiot and Noah Syndergaard both started their rehab assignments with Oklahoma City over the weekend. Syndergaard's was a little bit more sort of telegraphed in the sense that Dave Roberts said he likely would be going out on rehab after the All-Star break at some point. But Pepiot's, I felt like, sort of came out of nowhere, and he started Friday night again for OKC. It was his first game action since spring training. He started in the Exhibition Freeway Series and injured his oblique, which has now kept him out the entire season up to this point. Pepiot allowed 1 run on 2 hits. He had 2 strikeouts and went 2 innings, kind of, short outing, obviously still sort of building up his pitch count. And, now Syndergaard, he, again, was also with OKC. The plan for him was to go 4 innings, but he was efficient. He wound up getting through 5. He allowed 2 runs. His fastball velocity still averaged 92.7 miles an hour. Blake, I'll kind of frame it like this. I think it's fair to say that Pepiot and Syndergaard both face kind of a longer rehab road ahead, at least, 3 weeks minimum, I think is fair to say. If you needed to guess right now and pick one, do you think Pepiot or Syndergaard is going to pitch first for the Dodgers?
I think Syndergaard's going to be ready first. I don't know if that means he's going to pitch for the Dodgers this year again. I'm not sure what his role is. His stuff still isn't good in the minor leagues. They were kind of hoping maybe the injury and the time off would help him get some of that back, but it's just not great still. I know he was efficient with OKC, as you said, but it's AAA, and it's not the same thing at pitching at the major league level. So I think he's going to be ready sooner. I'm just not sure if they're going to add him to their roster or end up DFAing him or put him in a trade package that he doesn't have value really, but some team might want him just to eat some innings for a month or 2. So I'd say Pepiot is more likely to pitch first, but it's going to be down the line. He's probably going to need a long build-up.
Yeah, I think, with Syndergaard, you bring up a good point. Dave Roberts did say when he was discussing the couple times that Syndergaard did face hitters at Dodger Stadium, he threw live BP, faced, I think, Miguel Vargas, Yoni Hernandez, Johnny Dulick over, separate days. When Dave was discussing Syndergaard's road to returning to the rotation, which as of this moment, at least publicly, the Dodgers are saying that their plan is for Syndergaard to come back as a starting pitcher. That's what they want him sort of preparing for. But Dave Roberts did say that they are going to take into account, the results that Syndergaard has while he's on his rehab assignment. And maybe not so much in the literal sense of, what the box score looks like, but, certainly the pitch characteristics. I think the velocity probably is a factor, or at least effectiveness. And yeah, I mean, have you been able to, maybe pinpoint, is there one area that you think Syndergaard needs to kind of change or just improve on that you think might get him back on track? Because, a lot was said about how he struggled last year against the Angels, but if you look at how he did it with the Angels last season, the Dodgers would absolutely kill for that type of production.
Is it okay to say everything? I mean, his command's been really good. I'll give him that, but the stuff just isn't there. I was kind of previously hoping they could make him a Tyler Anderson type where he relies on his changeup a lot more, and you can kind of live without having that elite fastball velocity, but he hasn't been able to get the changeup down as much, and it just doesn't look like there's anything there to work with anymore at this point. So I know there's been some questions about maybe putting him in the bullpen, but Dave Roberts said that's not really a plan that they're considering, and I don't think this stuff would play up well in the bullpen to begin with, so I'm just not sure what there is with him. Like, maybe he can be average, giving you some innings, but they definitely can't rely on him.
Do you see a scenario then where maybe the Dodgers ultimately DFA Syndergaard? Because like you said, and I do agree with you, I'm not sure how effective he would be out of the bullpen anyway. There just doesn't seem to be any uptick in his velocity or any of the other stuff. So let's say that is the case. They don't necessarily have a bullpen role, and the rotation, as much as it is kind of a risky gamble, but whether by trade and or getting players back healthy is kind of full. Do you see a scenario where maybe the Dodgers just decide, okay, we need to DFA Syndergaard?
Yes, and I think it'll probably depend on what they do at the trade deadline. If they add one starter, they might say, let's just keep him to have some depth and see what he can provide. If they go out and get two starters, I think it's more likely they DFA him. But with Emmett Sheehan and Bobby Miller pitching better than him already, I don't think they can make a case for putting Syndergaard back in the rotation unless it's an absolute need. So I think there's definitely a path to DFA him.
Yeah. All right. So real quick before we move on, let's talk Pepiot a little bit. Like I said, his rehab start was his first game since the exhibition Freeway Series when he ended up injuring his oblique, which Pepiot, he was supposed to make the opening day roster. He ended up going the IL instead. And at the time he said, I think we caught this early enough. It's a little ironic to look back on. He said, if I just don't throw for, I think he said like 3 days, maybe even 5 days, like he should be fine. And then start throwing again. And now here we are in July and he's just getting off a mound in a game. He's had, I think, one setback at least in between all of this. Do you see him, getting, whether it's built up or just sharp enough to contribute to the Dodgers, whether again, it's either bullpen or as a starter?
I'm sure he can. There's still a few months left in the season. Depends how his stuff's going to look and how he recovers in time. But yeah, I think there's a path there. He might be best off coming to try and help out the bullpen, which is what a lot of scouts have thought his long-term role might be anyways. His stuff will definitely play up there, and he wasn't impressing necessarily as a starter. So could be a good role for him for the Dodgers to see what they can do with him, and makes sense, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with Pepiot. I think at the very least, he'll give the Dodgers, knock on wood, another healthy pitcher that they could sort of count on, because as they found this season, those for whatever reason have just been extremely difficult to come by. So let's move on. Our next topic is good old Jake Marisnick, who has appeared in a couple games for the Dodgers. If you missed it, right before the Mets series started, he was signed, not only signed, but signed to a major league contract, which honestly, that was the most surprising component to me about it. The Dodgers, we've seen them take flyers on him, on players, in the past, but Marisnick got a major league deal, was added to the active roster. He obviously is he played for the 2017 Astros that stole signs throughout the year and went on to win. I use that term loosely, the World Series. So Blake, what I know we sort of discussed this in a short video earlier in the week. What's your kind of impression? Or were you surprised that the Dodgers signed Marisnick? Is it just matter of their need kind of trumped everything else?
I wasn't really surprised by it. Like you said, I was surprised it was a major league deal. I figured he would get a minor league deal and kind of have to prove himself. But I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of a need that they had, and he was a free player available. It's not ideal that he was on the 2017 Astros, and I know a lot of fans are upset by that, and they should be. But at the same time, on the Dodgers roster, there's only 3 players left that have ties to the 2017 team, and 2 of them are friends with Marisnick from high school, and the other's Clayton Kershaw, who was introduced to Marisnick by Austin Barnes. So if you don't know, Austin Barnes and Jake Marisnick played high school baseball together, and Chris Taylor and Jake Marisnick were travel ball teammates for a season. So I don't think it's going to cost them any problems in the clubhouse or anything. It's just, there's always going to be a sour taste when you're talking about a player from that team, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And before we can circle back to this, let me get to Laura. Thank you for the super chat comment. I know I told everybody we'd discuss Muncie, but she wants us to get on it now. Her question is, how long is Muncy's contract? I would 100% rather have JT at third. Blake, what can you tell us about Muncy's contract status?
He has a team option next year for, I think it's 10 million off the top of my head or something like that. And then after that, he would be a free agent. And I know it's going to pain some people to hear it, but I would say the Dodgers are 100% picking that up. When you look at other free agent contracts that are given out, Muncy's value is way ahead of theirs for players who are getting similar salaries. Like Joey Gallo had his down year and got that amount of money. Muncy is having an above average year by weighted runs created plus. And I know a lot of people want to talk about the batting average, but the Dodgers are also saying he has a lot of homers. He has an 800 OPS. And for 10 million a year, like that's just a solid contract to have. They don't see negative value in that. It's just they're not valuing batting average anymore.
Now, what about in terms of kind of his play at third base? Do you have any strong feelings one way or the other, whether you want to compare him with Justin Turner or not? Just in general, Max Muncy at third base.
I don't think he's great there, but I think he's at least passable. I'm not sure what the metrics say. I haven't looked at them in quite a while. They're probably not too favorable about him, but I haven't noticed anything where it's like costing the Dodgers too many wins. There's going to be some plays he doesn't make and some plays that he probably should make, but I don't think it's enough of an issue to have to make a change.
Yeah, I will say that, taking it back to last season, because Laura's mentioning Justin Turner as well, I personally was surprised that Muncy played as much third base last year as he did. I thought Justin Turner would still receive, kind of the majority of the starts there. And honestly, at the time, back then, I wasn't fully convinced or sold or understanding of what the Dodgers sort of saw in Muncy as a third baseman. I thought he adjusted at second base as well. Obviously, if you want to tie in kind of the limits on defensive shifts and Miguel Vargas and whether or not the Dodgers trust him at third base, that I think became a factor in maybe Muncy maybe playing third more than I expected last year and definitely sticking there this year so that Vargas could play second. Jonathan Montgomery, so it's not since we're on the topic, it's Muncy, does his option get declined on this pace? I've raised this question to you guys multiple times on some of our live shows. By you guys, I mean Blake and Jeff. I don't think they decline it. I think, like Blake said, in terms of the production that they're getting from Muncy, the Dodgers still value that. And I know you sort of answered it, so I don't want to make you repeat yourself. But is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think if they wanted to move on from him, he'd be a trade piece more than someone they just outright cut. Like if Muncy was on the free agent market, he would get at least 15 million a year. And I know a lot of fans don't believe that, but that's what we're looking at. That's kind of where he's on pace for. So I think he has positive value in his contract, and the Dodgers wouldn't just give that up for free.
Yeah, good point. All right, so let's get thank you, Laura, for the super chat. Again, if you guys want to do that, we'll stop our show and kind of touch on that topic really quick and then get back to our originally scheduled content. And that now brings us to kind of a bevy of injury updates. And I think obviously Clayton Kershaw is sort of the most notable. The end of June, he left his start against the Rockies. He asked to come out after 6 innings. The Dodgers and Kershaw were both very vague for a few days as to what was sort of ailing him. It ended up being his left shoulder, which Kershaw said is shoulder inflammation. And the expectation, he kind of continued throwing. He wasn't necessarily getting off the mound for bullpen sessions, so he had to go on the IL, which unfortunately prevented him from participating in the All-Star game this past week. He still made it up there with his family, which was great to see. But then, leading up to the All-Star break, the expectation, the messaging at least, was that Kershaw would be ready pretty much, if not the Mets series, then the series right after that, which is going to be the Orioles. I think definitely at some point on the road trip. Now here we are. The latest news on Kershaw is that he had an MRI on his left shoulder. All that he would say is that it was taken before the All-Star break. He, again, is not revealing kind of specifics for it. But Dave Roberts has, kicked the can down the road. And now we're looking at a scenario where Kershaw's not returning until August at kind of best case scenario. Blake, I may not need to ask you this, but does any of this surprise you?
Not at all. I think we kind of knew Dave Roberts kind of does something like this. I think we talked about it. Like, that's the concerning part. They always say a player's going to come back quickly. And then we're looking at a month down the line and they haven't even started rehabbing. So the timeline of it all just isn't shocking at all. I mean, it's kind of just a running joke at this point that this is how they deal with their injuries. And I don't think anyone's surprised by it.
Yeah, it's not surprised. I think, honestly, I level of concern, I think, has it gone up for you at all?
I don't think so, because I kind of expected this to happen, so
Okay.
it hasn't really changed my concern. I'd say it's concerning just because it's a pitcher dealing with a shoulder injury, and that's never ideal. But just the timeline being pushed back doesn't surprise me and change anything.
Yeah, I'll go with, I'm a little bit more concerned. I thought at first, as much as Dave Roberts, especially this season, has just been, his track record with injury updates is just not great at all. Seeing Kershaw still playing catch and able to keep his arm moving, I thought, things were okay, and maybe it was genuinely just sort of the inflammation that the cortisone injection he received would sort of cure it, if you will. He said it's been effective in the past. But I also did allow for, what's causing the inflammation. Like, is there an injury there? And I think now with Kershaw, sort of declining to give specifics of his MRI results and him being pushed back into August. And mind you, he's still, throwing and playing catch. I think he's planning on throwing a bullpen session while the Dodgers are in Baltimore. But basically, he said that Dr. Neil Alatrash, after reviewing his MRI results, said that whatever is going on in his shoulder just needs time to heal. So kind of hearing that, it concerns me. And I guess, credit to you for, you had the foresight to know that they were probably sort of leading us astray before that. Can the Dodgers, stay afloat without Kershaw? Let's say he misses another 3 weeks. I'm not counting on him being back at the beginning of August. I think we're looking at maybe like August 7th to 14th-ish type thing. But can they remain afloat if he's out for another 2-3 weeks?
It'll be challenging, but thankfully for them, the Diamondbacks aren't playing good right now. The Giants are what they are, and they have the trade deadline coming up, so we could start to see some moves here pretty soon. So it's possible. I don't think it's going to be easy, and I don't think they're going to make any major changes right now because of it, but we're going to see them do something at the trade deadline and try and stay afloat here.
Yeah, I think, for me, what's going to be interesting to see is how much longer Kershaw is out, because obviously, I guess what's helping is he is still throwing. So theoretically, he could just need, kind of one rehab start, if you will, let him pitch 4 or 5 innings, then he should be back and ready to join the Dodgers rotation. So let's move on to the next injury update, which was Jason Heyward. If you're watching Sunday's game, Heyward had the Dodgers' only hit off Max Scherzer. It was sort of a little check swing, an excuse me swing, and he kind of punched the ball down the third base line. It beat the shift, and so he had a single. He tried to stretch it out to a double. He ended up being thrown out in second base. He went in head first slide, kind of collided. I forgot which of the Mets infielders was. I don't know if it was Lindor or I forgot who started at second base for them today. And Heyward looked a little banged up. He initially stayed in the game. He then came out due to what the Dodgers described as neck soreness. I think there's maybe some reports of potential concern over maybe a concussion, which Heyward had, I think, in 2021. So he's going to be reevaluated. Dodgers will kind of see how he's feeling. Like if Heyward, misses, even if he avoids the IL, if he's out for like a week or so, we know the Dodgers try to kind of keep players active, even if they're not necessarily going to be playing right away. How big of a loss would it be? Because he's been especially against right-handed pitchers, he's been making regular starts with Miguel Vargas down in the minors now, and Mookie Betts playing the infield. So how big of a loss would this be?
It's a big loss because he's been performing well, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that's going to change the course of their season too much. He's been solid, but they have other guys who can step up into similar levels of production. I think Kershaw is like definitely the bigger injury if we're comparing them. So it's hard to say, like, he's a platoon guy, but he's been a valuable platoon guy. So it's hard to put like an exact number or any kind of thing on it, but it's going to hurt them. It's just not going to change their season, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair to say. All right. So sort of the last one, and Bobby Miller, like we were just alluding to, he pitched into the 5th inning, was doing okay, and then things sort of came undone a little bit. He didn't help himself fielding a comebacker, kind of hit back to the box and a potential double play, and only ended up being 1 out, and the Mets scored a run. It didn't end up mattering that much, as the Dodgers ultimately lost in extra innings anyway. But Dave Roberts, I guess, told the media after the game that Bobby Miller felt some soreness in his right knee, and that wasn't necessarily the reason he came out of the start, but it is something there. Level of concern, where could the Dodgers potentially turn if Miller does have to skip a start?
Noah Syndergaard. I don't think anyone wants to hear that right now, but I don't really have much concern with Miller's injury. It seems really minor, and it's just kind of something that's going to pass. Now, if it's still something that's affecting him into his next start, then I think we can talk about real concern. But right now, I don't think it's too much of anything.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And it should be noted, the Dodgers do have, I think, 3 off days remaining this month. And so they could sort of go down to, kind of a 4-man rotation and get a little creative if they need to. I know it's not something they necessarily prefer to do. If anything, they want to give their starters extra rest in between outings. But, if you kind of have to, if Syndergaard, like we said earlier in the show, his first rehab start, kind of more of the same that we saw during the regular season. And the Dodgers are, sort of evaluating what to do with him. So that's kind of it for our planned show. We're going to get to questions now. And as a reminder, if you have a question, throw it in the chat. We just ask that you start it with a question and the colon kind of in all quotes, so it's easier for me to kind of pick out of our comments. And while we're waiting for those to fill in, Blake, let's do a little home run derby sort of recap, thoughts on it. Were you Mookie only hitting 11 home runs, kind of going out in the first round? Were you surprised at all? Did you think he was going to struggle? Where did you fall?
I wasn't surprised. I thought maybe he could get kind of going in one round and hit some like 20 or something and then kind of tire out just because of his size. He's not one of the bigger home run hitters, but I wasn't just totally surprised by it or anything. I think a lot of people expected it, including Mookie himself was saying, like, I'm not built for this. I don't hit home runs in batting practice. So it just kind of is what it is. It's a good thing it doesn't really matter for anything.
Yeah, what I thought was kind of funny was just, he was pretty serious about his mom saying, telling him he better not come in last place. And so he said that was pretty much his only goal. And then, not only did he get eliminated in the first round, but he hit the fewest number of home runs by far of any participant. So that was a little unfortunate. The Dodgers, we have an article up on DodgerBlue.com. Dodgers don't have a great history in the home run derby. So frankly, Mookie just joined the long line of kind of underperformers, if you will. Anything you want to add before we get to this?
He did better than a lot of the Dodgers have done. It's like Mike Piazza hit 9, Puig hit 9, I think Kemp hit 1 or something like that. Like, it's just, not a good history.
That is true. It could be a lot worse. So another question from Laura: who's pitching the next 3 games? So Emmett Sheehan is starting Monday. Michael Grove is at least the probable for Tuesday, and Julio Urías is Wednesday. That would be the series finale against the Orioles, who heading into the Monday's game, they've won 8 in a row. So it's a hot Orioles team. And I'll even add, with Grove, even though he's the listed probable for Tuesday, the Dodgers have kind of shifted his role a little bit. So if they end up using an opener, I wouldn't be fully surprised at that point. Let's see. Nomo Fomo wants to know, how much would Giolito cost in a trade for the Dodgers? Blake, do you have? I know these questions for me are always difficult, right? Because it could change from today to tomorrow. But do you have any sort of general sense of what who the Dodgers may need to trade?
I mean, off the top of my head, it was someone like Michael Busch. I feel like that might be an overpay, but when you go back looking at the Yu Darvish trade, they gave up Willie Calhoun. When you look at the Scherzer and Trey Turner trade, they gave up 2 top 100 prospects. So I think you're looking at someone in that kind of range, maybe a Nick Frasso type piece instead, plus someone. It's just so hard to tell what other teams are interested in because every team evaluates prospects differently. So you're probably looking at least a top 100 guy and maybe something else depending on who the player is.
I think that's on point. Here's another question again about Max Muncy, who seems to be a popular subject tonight. Roy Estrada wants to know, why is Max Muncy batting probably so high up in the lineup? Should be batting 8th or 9th. Now, I think 8th or 9th is a little critical, but Blake, why is Muncy hitting where he is?
Because he hits homers and he has a good OPS still. And like, what are your other options there right now? Like, you're not putting David Peralta in the cleanup spot. You're not putting Miguel Rojas in the cleanup spot. You're not putting Chris Taylor in the cleanup spot, unless sometimes Dave likes to do that versus lefties. But it's just, he's kind of is their best option for that role. He's struggled a bit recently, but overall on the season, he's been fine. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Roy. Here's a fun one from David. And just a reminder, we're happy to answer Dodger questions. If you've watched this show in the past, you know that we'll dabble into food as well. That always tends to be kind of entertaining and spirited. But Jeff isn't here, so I think Blake and I might be aligned on a lot of answers tonight. But this one, Blake wants to know, David wants to know where Blake got his Dodgers bucket hat.
This was the Father's Day giveaway one at the stadium, so I got it from there.
Had to be there. Okay.
You can probably get it on eBay now or something.
Yeah. Let's get back to baseball. Mike M., will the Dodgers try to make an offer for Ohtani before the deadline?
Yes, but Artie Moreno is going to hang up the phone before Perry Minasian lets them listen to the offer. He's probably just going to pull the wire, stop paying the bill or something, because he's not going to let Ohtani get traded to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, honestly, if I'm the Dodgers, I probably make a pretty aggressive offer for Ohtani. I think, you know, almost to the point where the Angels can't necessarily say no. But again, this is Artie Moreno, and I am of the camp that Moreno is not going to trade. And again, I just want to clarify, there's no relation between myself and Artie Moreno before I continue discussing this. I don't see him trading Ohtani at all. I think that the Angels will just look to sort of maximize some of their marketing opportunities. I don't know about their promotional calendar for the second half of the season, but maybe there's an open date and they can, you know, do another bobblehead type thing to pack their stadium. And then I think they'll just take their chance in potentially trying to re-sign him in the offseason. So this one is kind of very on topic since the Dodgers just faced Max Scherzer. Scott Strong wants to know, are you guys fans of trading prospects for Scherzer plus cash?
So I think in that deal, the Mets would have to attach prospects to get rid of Scherzer's contract, because he has another year at least of $43 million, I think. I can look it up real quick, but it's not a very tradable contract, and the Mets would probably have to attach someone to get rid of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Mets are definitely going to be an interesting team to watch because I don't see them really turning things around, and I don't know if it would make sense for them to really kind of not necessarily go all in, but be aggressive and trying to improve their roster. Because honestly, after seeing them these 3 games, they're just not a very good baseball team. Like I think in some sense, they're much further off than the Dodgers are, but where there's multiple holes to plug. And so at what point does it maybe not make so much sense to do that? I know, Blake, you kind of got yourself into some hot water for expressing an opinion similar to that about the Dodgers. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand. Let's see. We'll answer a few more tonight. Laura, again, thank you. She wants to know, what's the photo behind you? I don't know if she's asking about the dog or the autograph.
That is from Disneyland. It's a Star Wars one. That is an autographed jersey that's custom with half Brooklyn Dodgers and half LA Dodgers. And then that's my dog, Kylo.
There we go. Okay. Let's see. Try to scroll for a few more. So Thunderpants, I'm not related to Artie Moreno, and I'm also not related to Jimmy Kimmel. Oddly, that's not the first time I've been asked that. At least not asked that, but I've been told I sort of look like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't necessarily see it, but maybe it's the beard. I have to shave. I know sometimes I think he has a beard now all the time. But yeah, let's see. Nomo, Blake, Kylo has a fan, so you could tell him.
Thank you. I think there's a question earlier about Walker Buehler coming back in September.
Yeah, I think that might have been before we started. So yeah, do you want to discuss Buehler?
Yeah, Buehler seems to think he's coming back in September. Dave Roberts said he isn't so sure about it. It's a very aggressive timeline. I don't think he'd come back as a starter, like at least one who's going to go deep into games if he comes back. Maybe he'll be like an opener type thing and give them 3 innings. But it's an aggressive timeline.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, taking that a step further, what's so aggressive with it is Buehler's not only targeting September, but he wants to be September 1st back with the Dodgers at that point. I agree with you. I don't necessarily see it, but, you know, he has been throwing bullpen sessions. And so, you know, who knows? I think what'll be the tell for me will be if Walker is able to start a rehab assignment kind of by August or early August to then go through a full month of rehab starts and then, you know, come back for September. But yeah, we'll see. Here's another one again with trade speculation. It's kind of hard to put something like this together, but what do you think a trade package for Ohtani would take?
It's such a hard question because there's never been a player like Ohtani traded. So it's just no idea like what teams are going to value and what they're going to be willing to offer. He's a rental, so he has 2 months or 3 months of control, whatever it is. He's an ace starting pitcher and an elite offensive bat. So do you value him as 2 players there? But he's also packaged into 1 player, so that's more valuable. So are you adding are you trading enough prospects to acquire 3 impact players essentially just with his value wise? That's also a rental. Like there's just so many factors that makes it so hard to calculate what a trade could be, but it's probably going to be more than anyone's comfortable with. You're probably looking at Diego Cartaya starting it out, maybe throwing in a Michael Busch and another starting pitcher, and then maybe 2 or 3 more top 100 prospects, and just keep adding until the Angels have to say yes, I guess is the only answer.
The only thing I'll push back is Ohtani has had either some like fingernail or like blister issues. So his trade value, in my opinion, needs to be diminished a little bit just because he's not pitching right now, right?
I mean, yeah, but the Dodgers have their blister pitcher injury history, so maybe they could fix that.
That's true. Here's a good one from Jason, kind of maybe a little bit easier to answer. Is there any prospects that are off limits when you're putting a package together for Ohtani?
I don't think so. I mean, it's their most talented prospect is blocked by Will Smith. I know he'll probably be a free agent by the time Cartaya is ready, but Will Smith is a guy you're probably going to want to sign and keep around. They also have Dalton Rushing, who looks really good. So, I think you could tolerate losing Cartaya. So after that, if we're talking about Bobby Miller as a prospect still, I'd say maybe him. But at the same time, it's Shohei Ohtani. I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I think he's the greatest athlete in history of any sport. He's doing things that no one has ever done. It would be like if Tom Brady was also an elite free safety, or if Wayne Gretzky played goalie on days. It's just insane to think of what he's doing, and you kind of just have to give whatever you want if you want to get him on your team.
Yeah, so earlier we got some Gonsolin bullpen propaganda from you. Now you get in your Tom Brady mention, since again Jeff isn't with us tonight. Let's see. I saw one. Yeah, I think this is a good question from Michael. If Friedman only makes 1 or 2 trades, do you think that means this season isn't winnable and thus the fans shouldn't expect much in October?
I don't, because Friedman hates trading at the trade deadline to begin with. And as we all know, once you get into the playoffs, it's kind of like anything can happen. There's so many holes on this team, and I think we've all kind of addressed that and understand that. But you're not going to be able to fill them all, or else you're not going to have a farm system left, and you're kind of giving up your future to go all in on now, when in reality, this is the season that they kind of pushed to the side a little bit more. They didn't do anything big in the offseason. They went and got Miguel Rojas and Noah Syndergaard as their basically big signings. So I think they're just kind of being conservative this year and kind of hoping toward next year, where they hopefully have Ohtani after free agency and they kind of make a splash there.
Yeah, I think not only did they go get Miguel Rojas, but then they locked him up to an extension. And I know I may have misled our friend Scotty on Miggy getting, quote, locked up at the time that news broke on our way home from FanFest back in, was that January, February?
February, I think. Yeah,
February. So here's a good food one question. Do you guys like the nacho? This is from EB. Do you guys like the nacho cheese they serve on the nachos at Dodger Stadium? Feels like it's 3-week-old stale cheese for $16.
I feel like you should start with this one because you're the cheese expert here.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is I haven't had the nachos at Dodger Stadium, honestly, in quite some time. So I can't specifically answer this question. I can tell you that the cheesesteak that they sell and the cheese on that tastes fine, although I think it still is a little overpriced. But again, like we've discussed kind of before this, it's a little bit to be expected with stadium food.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel when you go to Dodger Stadium. You can't expect to eat good. The real move is to eat before you go at a good local place and then go to the game. If you can't do that, you're kind of stuck with what they have. I mean, I don't think it's very good, and it's not like I hear San Diego has really good food, so we can't just blame stadium food. It's definitely a Dodger Stadium thing.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for, this might not be a popular opinion, but Petco Park, their food offerings are great, and it's no shortage of different things that you could try there. It's definitely worth it heading down if you haven't. Let's see. I feel like the chat's kind of winding down. We can answer this one. If you have a few more, throw them in and we'll try to get to them. But if not, we'll end up closing this out. Nomo FOMO, why can't Gonsolin go longer than 54 pitches? So again, like we mentioned earlier, Gonsolin was giving up kind of a lot of hard contact in his start. Dave Roberts said the humidity was sort of a factor. Gonsolin did say he felt he could have gone at least another inning or two. I think as a competitor, you're always going to hear that from a pitcher, so that's good. I mean, I don't know if he would necessarily say like, yeah, I wanted to come out. I don't know really of any pitchers that would say, short of like if they're dealing with an injury. But yeah, I don't know anything you want to add to that, Blake.
He's a reliever.
There you go. Yeah, that's kind of it. So Laura does agree. Petco. Oh, that's good here. She had a typo. Petco food is the best.
Someone asked earlier about predictions for the Orioles series. You can kind of get in on that. I mean, the Orioles are a really good team. It'll be a good test for the Dodgers. The Orioles have a lot of young talent. They're kind of like a better version of what the Diamondbacks are doing this year. It'll be a real test for the Dodgers. I think right now the Orioles are only 2 games behind the Rays or something like that. So the Rays were the best team in baseball for most of the year, which says a lot about how well the Orioles are playing. And I would say just keep an eye on their players. They have a lot of fun, young talent, and exciting. You don't get to see them a lot, but now with the balanced schedule, gives us the opportunity to see Adley Rutschman and Cedric Mullins and Grayson Rodriguez and all those kind of players. So they're a fun team, and it'll be a good series.
All right, let's. There's a good question from Jason. So before I ask Jason's question, Blake, let me ask you: are you willing to declare the Dodgers Orioles a World Series preview?
I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure it'd be my prediction at this moment, but it wouldn't totally shock me.
Okay, all right. Let's end with this one. Jason wants to ask question: scale of 1 to 10, rate your happiness with the Padres' struggles.
I mean, to me, the Padres still are just kind of the Padres. Like, they were good for a year or two, but they've always just been the Padres. They won in the postseason, good for them. I think it's funny because the fans are a little more annoying on Twitter all the time. So I kind of laugh at them. But like, other than that, I think the Padres are just, they've always kind of been like the irrelevant little brother kind of feeling to the Dodgers. And I mean, it doesn't really change my feelings too much.
Yeah. I think, for me, the kind of where it starts and ends, honestly, is a lot of fans. We've heard it from different fan bases that, the Dodgers didn't win a real World Series in 2020. It's a Mickey Rouse ring, this and that. And whenever, we've had Padres fans either join our live streams or just tweet us, whatever the case is about that stuff, I remind them that there were thousands, tens of thousands of Padres fans celebrating in Gaslamp when the Padres advanced to the NLDS to play the Dodgers. So they were celebrating the 2020 postseason, getting into the NLDS, but then the minute they ended up getting swept, then all of a sudden everything became irrelevant, which I have never fully understood. But I'll digress.
I think the funniest thing with the Padres is if you look at all the players they've traded to build the roster that they have now, it would easily probably be the best team in baseball. Like, just off the top of my head, like they've traded Max Fried, Trey Turner, Brent Rooker, Anthony Rizzo, just endless really good players, like a full pitching staff, a full good lineup. It's just funny.
Yeah, but AJ, your favorite GM, AJ Preller, right? He's always going for it. He's got this reputation of swinging big. All right, well, I didn't see anything. We had just kind of the 1 or 2 food questions this time, so we got out light there. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Again, don't forget to ring the notification bell, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our podcast, rate, review, all that. We appreciate it. It helps us. And yeah, keep an eye out throughout the week. We obviously have daily articles, a ton of content up on DodgerBlue.com, and we are going to have draft summary videos. It's escaping me. Oh, trade deadline stuff with Jeff and Daniel. That'll be up on our YouTube channel this week. So make sure to keep an eye on that. Thanks, everybody.